Haunted Cornfield Secrets. Boy discovers sinister rustling in the crops. Exposed true story. Jake stood at the edge of the cornfield, heart pounding like a drum in his ears. The tall stalks danced restlessly in the gusty night air, shadows twisting and turning like lost spirits. He could feel something lurking in the dark, something that sent a shiver down his spine. The stories whispered around town about the Cornfield Whisperer flooded his mind. An evil spirit said to lure children away with promises of treasure, leaving nothing but empty silence behind. His beloved dog, Max, had vanished into the night, and desperation clawed at his throat. Jake's fingers trembled as he gripped his flashlight, feeling the weight of every chilling tale told in hushed tones back at the diner. Something rustled in the field, a faint, beckoning whisper that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. Sweat dripped down his brow as he peered into the vast, dark expanse. "This is just a raccoon," he whispered to himself, but inside, dread clawed deeper. He had spent the day searching for Max, but despite the faded posters and echoes of memories, he had found nothing. "Just your imagination, Jake," his mother had said wearily as she packed her bag for her second job, brushing his fears aside like dust on a shelf. Her tired eyes were distant. She didn't see the danger lurking just beyond their yard. He felt utterly alone, trapped in a world that only seemed to spin further into shadows. As he stepped forward, each crunch of dried leaves beneath his shoes rang out like gunfire through the silence. The further he went, the louder the whispers seemed to hum around him, tantalizing and taunting, promising secrets hidden deep within the cornfield's heart. His flashlight flickered, casting jagged shadows like a pulse, and then he spotted a weathered missing child poster wedged under a root, the boy grinning cheerfully from the shadowy past, now nothing but a memory. Panic surged through him, tightening like a noose. What if he was next? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake plunged deeper into the maze, sweat-soaked and breathless, clutching the flashlight that felt heavier with every passing second. The giggle of a child echoed through the chill, pulling him further into the twisted pathway of endless rows. The shadows merged and split before his eyes, visions of darting figures sliding just beyond his periphery, whispers weaving tales of terror that buried deep into his heart. His pulse thrummed in his ears, his steps growing faster as if the very field itself was alive and hungry to swallow him whole. And then he heard it again, a soft, childlike giggle. His mind raced with horrifying visions. Could it be another child caught up in the spirit's snare? With his resolve burning bright, Jake pressed on, not realizing the danger coiling around him like a viper, waiting for its moment to strike. Breath hitching, Jake turned to call out for whoever it was, but fear clamped down on his throat. A figure broke through the corn, silhouetted against the moonlight, too tall and too familiar, its laughter hauntingly wrong. In that moment, time seemed to freeze, and Jake stood paralyzed, realizing the whispers were not just stories. The Cornfield Whisperer was real, and he might not leave this place alive, not before the shadows took him into their eternal embrace. Jake's breath quickened as the figure stepped closer, its outline becoming clearer amid the stalks swaying in the night breeze. His heart hammered in a rhythm of dread, a drum echoing against the emptiness surrounding him. The laughter twisted in the air, a haunting melody that chilled him to the bone. It was unmistakably the laugh of a child, yet it carried an edge, something sinister lurking beneath its playful facade. "Max!" he shouted, his voice cracking. The name hung suspended in the air, swallowed by the rustling corn. He hoped against hope that his call would stir his dog from whatever dark corner in this twisted maze he might be hiding. But all he received in return was silence, heavy, dreadful silence that pressed against his ears like a weight. The figure loomed closer, emerging from the shadowy rose. Pale skin gleamed in the moonlight, eyes wide and vacant, as though they held all the secrets of the cornfield. Jake could see that it was a boy, perhaps the same one from the missing poster. But something was very wrong. There was a dullness in those eyes, an absence of warmth that made the pit of his stomach churn. "Come play with me," the boy said, his voice dripping with a sweetness that felt sickly. Jake took a tentative step back, instinctively raising the flashlight as if it could ward off the encroaching darkness. "I need to find my dog," he shouted, trying to steel his voice against the rising tide of fear. Behind him, the whispers grew louder, swirling in a cacophony of indecipherable words, teasing him, coaxing him to step further into the cornfield's embrace. The boy's laughter echoed, an unsettling sound mingling with the rustle of the cornstalks. "He's right here," the boy said, tilting his head as if listening for something. "You just have to follow me." The urge to flee surged through Jake. His instinct screamed at him to run. Yet curiosity mixed with desperation. He needed answers, he needed Max back. Drawing in a shaky breath, he hesitated, glancing around, his ears straining for any sign of his dog. The cold sweat trickled down his spine, and from the corner of his eye, he thought he saw a familiar golden form slipping behind a wall of corn. "Max!" he called again, more frantic this time. The boy merely giggled, the sound echoing eerily as he danced in place, beckoning Jake to come closer. "You'll find him if you trust me." With uncertainty hanging in the air, Jake took a cautious step forward, the ground beneath him soft and treacherous. Each step felt like a sin. The boy's empty eyes bore into him, pulling him closer to an abyss he didn't want to explore. The whispers grew louder now, a symphony of voices weaving through the air, wrapping around him like chains. "Don't listen to them," Jake shouted in defiance, shaking his head as dread seeped into his bones. He knew deep down that this was a trap, a web spun by the Cornfield Whisperer, but the urge to find Max clawed at him like panic. Suddenly, a low growl followed by sharp barking pierced the night, a sound Jake recognized instantly. "Max!" The boy's expression twisted into something dark and twisted, the glimmer of false innocence fading. The laughter turned to a low hiss, serpentine in its malice. "You'll regret that," he whispered, as the shadows around them began to churn and twist violently. Jake clenched his flashlight tighter, a desperation boiling in his gut. He had to act, and fast. His heart raced as he turned towards the sound of his dog, now a beacon of hope in a landscape of despair. But what awaited him beyond the shadows? Would he rescue Max, or would he fall victim to the very darkness that haunted this cursed field? The heartbeat of the cornfield pulsed around him as he sprinted toward the growl. He didn't look back. Fear drove him forward, but with each step, he felt the darkness close and the boy's grin stretching wider, the whispers now a thunderous roar. "You can't escape." As he plunged deeper into the maze, Jake realized he might not be ready for what lay ahead. Would the truth reveal hope or damnation? But before he could ponder further, a cold hand shot from the shadows, wrapping around his ankle with a grip that felt otherworldly. Jake fell hard, the ground rushing to meet him, and in that moment, the whispers hushed, leaving an eerie stillness that was even more terrifying. With adrenaline pumping, Jake pushed himself up, gasping as the weight of the field pressed around him like an unseen predator closing in. Would he be the next child the cornfield claimed? Or could he find a way out of this nightmare before it swallowed him whole? Jake's heart thudded in his chest, panic igniting his senses. The cold grip on his ankle seemed to seep through to his very soul. With a surge of will, he kicked his leg, dragging the hand into the shadows. He scrambled to his feet and darted forward, the brisk air biting his skin like icy shards. He had to move. Fear blurred the line between logic and instinct. The whispers returned, louder, now accompanied by the rustling of the cornstalks, a sinister symphony echoing through the field. "You'll never find him. You'll become one of us," they chanted, a chorus of lost souls that twisted around him, taunting and seductive. "Max!" he screamed, desperation sharp in his voice. Each step felt like running into tar, the air thickening around him as if the cornfield itself wanted to drag him down. He fought against the urge to give in, but the sight of the boy's hollow eyes haunted him, a reminder of what he could lose. Suddenly, a rustle from his right caught his attention. Sparks of hope ignited as he glimpsed a flicker of gold. "Max!" he shouted, sprinting towards the movement. But as he closed the distance, the shadows morphed around him, the path ahead twisting in impossible ways. "No!" he yelled, stamping down on the ground, willing the field to respect his presence. The oppressive weight bore down harder, the whispers swelling into a frenzy. Branches scratched his arms, tearing at his skin, but he pressed on. He had to stay focused, and then he saw it. A small shape crouched beneath a low-hanging branch of corn. It was definitely Max. Too still, too quiet. Jake's breath caught in his throat as he knelt beside his dog, cradling the golden fur in his arms. "You're okay, boy. I've got you." But Max didn't respond. His body felt cold, rigid. A terrifying dread coiled tightly in Jake's stomach. He felt so deeply alone. The boy's laughter echoed around him, now hauntingly close. "Did you think it would be that easy?" The voice slithered from behind him. Jake whipped around, the flashlight beam slicing through the oppressive darkness, but it found nothing, only a ripple through the stalks. "Show yourself," he demanded, anger mingled with fear. The shadows shifted, pulsating with life, the boy's silhouette flickering in and out of view. "Come play with us." "No!" Jake cried, his voice cracking with raw emotion. This was no game. He clutched Max tighter, horrified at what could become of them if he didn't escape. Then, something shifted in the air, a low hum thrummed through the ground. The cornfield vibrated beneath his feet, unsettling the very fabric of reality around him. Dark shapes began to seep through the soil, twisting like tendrils of smoke. Ghostly faces appeared, wailing in muted agony, their eyes filled with longing. Jake stumbled back, shock crashing over him. The whispered threats morphed into cries of anguish, piercing his heart with fear. He had to run. But the faces, they seemed all too familiar, children lost to the cornfield, their voices woven into the fabric of this nightmare. "Don't you want to stay?" The boy's voice echoed from within the chorus of lost souls, a sickening sweetness layering the darkness. "No!" Jake shouted again, scrambling away from the grasping hands and pleading faces. Each step felt like a betrayal to those trapped within their own despair. He wanted to turn back, to save them, but the cold grip of survival pushed him forward. Through the chaos, he remembered the flashlight. Suddenly, like a beacon through the storm, he turned the beam towards the ghosts, their faces blurring in the light, the roar of whispers fading. A momentary calm settled as the light swallowed the darkness around him, but it was fleeting. The shadows roared back to life, erupting with rage. The boy was coming for him, and now the ground beneath him began to crack. "Run!" he commanded his legs, ignoring the anguish of the souls left behind. The path twisted and turned, each corner revealing new horrors, new whispers. He could feel the walls closing in, could hear the frantic cries of the lost echoing in his ears. Ahead, the end of the field was in sight, an escape, if only he could reach it. But just as hope shone bright, a figure blocked his path. The boy stood there, eyes wide and unblinking, mouth curling into a wicked grin. "Did you really think you could leave?" His voice resonated, shaking the earth beneath Jake's feet. Jake's breath caught as adrenaline surged. It was now or never. He took off toward the boy. And as he charged, the ground trembled violently beneath him, pulling at his soles as if trying to drag him back into the darkness. Would he break free, or would he become another lost soul? The boy's laughter rang out, growing louder. "You can't escape your fate," and with that, Jake's world began to swirl, reality fracturing around him. As he hurtled through the chaos, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was not alone and the field was hungry. What awaited him on the other side of the cornfield? Jake felt the earth lurch beneath him as he barreled toward the boy. The chilling laughter echoed in his ears, a taunting sound that striped away any bravery he clung to. Each footstep brought him closer to the light at the edge of the field, and yet, the shadows clawed at him, thousands of hands stretching through the dark corn to pull him back. He was almost there. Just a few more strides. But that hope flickered like a dying bulb. In the shadows, the soil churned, alive with dark energy, and it was hungry. "You won't leave, Jake." The boy's voice sliced through the air, venomous and gloating. Just ahead, where the cornfield met the woods, silence settled like thick fog. A release, and yet a trap. "Get away from me!" Jake shouted, a desperate plea swirling with unbridled anger. The figure remained stationary, eyes glinting like embers in the night. Without thinking, Jake lunged toward the boy, but the earth trembled violently, splitting open below him. A jagged chasm gaped wide as if to swallow him whole. He diverted at the last moment, skidding to avoid falling into the abyss, but the motion threw him off balance. One of the tendrils, dark and sinewy, seized him by the ankle, yanking him backward. Panic ignited as he felt the cold soil gnawing at his skin. "Max," he cried out instinctively, his heart racing at the thought of losing his beloved dog forever. "Max is ours now," the boy grinned. His laughter pierced the night, mingling with the cries of the lost, forming a cacophony that wrapped around Jake like a serpent. Dread filled every inch of Jake, rendering him momentarily paralyzed. The sinister knowledge that Max was beyond his reach clawed at him, spurring him into action. He pulled free with sheer will, the darkness resisting, but he surged forward, breaking through sheer desperation. He sprinted toward the edge of the field. The trees beckoned, their dark silhouettes offering the promise of safety. He could almost feel the rush of fresh air as he dashed past cornstalks that leaned menacingly into his path, thirsting for his warmth, and suddenly it all went still. The whispers faded, replaced by a suffocating silence. He dared to glance back just once. The boy stood motionless, a statue of malevolence, the shadows wrapping around him like a lover. With each heartbeat, Jake felt the boy's eyes bore into him, a curse begging him to return. "Leave me alone," he shouted, his voice breaking. But as he turned to focus on his escape, a low growl erupted from behind him. Panic gripped him like ice. Max's bark erupted next to him, full of life and urgency, his furry body bursting into view, golden fur glimmering like sunlight. Relief surged through Jake, but it was short-lived. Max was not just a dog now, he had become a vessel of the field's wrath. The connection felt wrong, twisted by the darkness of the land. "Stay back, Max," Jake ordered, taking a step back. But the dog lunged forward, warping into a silhouette of shadow, eyes devoid of familiarity. The boy laughed again, echoing around them like a funereal bell. "Your fate is sealed, Jake. Choose." Jake stumbled, feeling the weight of choice crush him. The woods felt so close yet so impossibly far. He strained to remember who he was fighting for, but the ground shifted again, the remnants of lost spirits pulsing below him, whispering of despair. "Choose to save your boy or choose your own survival," the boy whispered through the stillness. Jake felt the chasm open wide before him, devouring thoughts and possibilities. His breath tightened as he weighed his options. Would he risk it all for his beloved Max, or make a break for freedom? The torment squeezed his heart. "Max, come here," Jake shouted, the boy's laughter taunting him, a lingering promise of doom. Suddenly, darkness surged forward, swallowing all hope. A shadowy hand clutched his wrist as if to drown him in despair. As he struggled against the grasp, the ground trembled, and the choice began to mold in his mind. Would he face the harvest of his worst fears or plunge into the unknown? He blinked as a flicker of light shimmered in the darkness, a beacon of possibility. And just as the shadows began to close in, Jake let out a roar, a primal sound of defiance. "I choose." What would he choose? The ground shook ominously around him. A decision was on the knife's edge. Would it be salvation or nightmare? The twisted melody of laughter rose, and just then a bright light split the night, illuminating the shadows. Jake gasped as the truth jagged into clarity. What awaits on the other side? The light was blinding, washing over Jake like waves crashing onto the shore. He squinted, instinctively raising his arm to shield himself. The shadows recoiled, faint whispers of despair skimming the edges of the illumination. In that instant, he felt the grip on his wrist falter, the cold tendrils loosening their hold. Jake glanced toward Max. The dog stood there, trembling, the dark energy that had warped his form wavering as the light enveloped him. A moment of clarity, a flicker of the dog he loved. Max! Jake shouted, desperation tightening his throat. He took a step, heart racing, but the ground rippled beneath him once more. The boy's laughter sliced through the air again, a cruel reminder that no victory came without a price. You think that light can save you? Choose wisely, Jake, for the end is here. Jake's heart hammered against his chest. The chasm now loomed behind him, a gaping void of shadow. The laughter warped, echoing the voices of the lost, the cries of souls that had fallen prey to the dark field. Jake felt a prickle of fear crawl up his spine. What if the light was just another trick? Another step. He focused on Max, the fading brilliance of his loyal dog igniting a desperate hope. The light shimmered, taunting him, a fragile path that led away from the darkness. Stay with me, boy. Come back. Max's form flickered, a constant battle between the dog he loved and the terrifying creature he'd become. Fight it. It was a command, yet it felt more like a plea. The darkness swirled, and the boy took a step forward, the shadows creeping closer. You can't escape. The field owns him now. But Jake would not surrender. He drew upon the strength of his courage, a wave of defiance crashing over him. I choose him. I choose my dog. His voice rang out, firm against the encroaching night. The light flared, its intensity slicing through the shadows like a knife. Jake thrust his hand forward toward Max. Come back to me. With a burst of energy, the light surged forward, creating a path straight toward the dog. Jake rushed, heart racing, breathing heavy as he strained to reach Max, the promise of their connection fueling every step he took. The shadows howled, the boy's face twisted in rage. No. This is not how it ends. The air crackled with energy, and Jake felt the ground beneath him tremble. He could see Max clearly now, a deep warmth emanating from within that light. The edges of his form sharpened, the darkness threatening to consume him. It was a haunting dance between love and despair, a tragic clash of species bound by loyalty against the malice of the field. Max! Jake shouted again, and in that instant, time seemed to slow. The light rippled, and the dog began to sprint toward him, the dark tendrils retreating as if burned. But it wasn't over yet. With a final scream, the boy raised his hand to the sky, shadows coiling around him like vipers. You think you can break the bond? This land is cursed. Fear surged through Jake, but he held firm. The light privy to their bond flared brighter, pushing back the darkness like a dam breaking. The boy's face twisted in fury, and the shadows seethed, churning like a living creature. Jake felt his feet rooted to the ground, an unwarranted panic rising, and then suddenly, he felt Max's fur brush against his hand. The warmth spread through him. We can do this together. The final decision loomed, a tug-of-war between light and dark, love and sacrifice. Jake closed his eyes, imprinting the moment in his mind. What would it cost? He felt the weight of his heart, the urgency driving him. In that heartbeat of eternity, the ground split beneath him again, and with a sinister rumble, Jake faced the darkness that was both predator and prey. What awaited in the depths? What would remain when the light faded? And then, just as Max barked, the light exploded outward, the chasm beneath them widening ominously. Will it be enough? Or will they both succumb to the field's vengeance? Jake stumbled forward into a blinding aura, panic seeping through him like drenched clothing clinging to skin. The explosion of light seemed to push against the oppressive darkness, creating a bubble, a false sense of safety. But like everything else in this haunted field, it was fleeting. Max stood resolute at the center of it, a flickering mirage of hope caught in the turmoil of shadow and light. Yet beneath the swirling chaos, Jake sensed something darker slouching back into the recesses, a malevolence that seeped into the ground, clawing its way to the surface. The boy's laughter echoed again, this time laced with something deeper, something personal. "You think you can run away from me?" he taunted. The shadows behind him twisted and writhed, eager to consume whatever light Jake had garnered. "Max, stay close!" Jake shouted, adrenaline sharpening his focus. He could barely hear his own voice over the mounting cacophony, a chorus of whispers clawing at his sanity, urging him to look down into the chasm. They promised the truth, the power that lies beneath the fraying strands of reality, but Jake was terrified of what that truth could mean. He forced himself to stay attuned to Max, whose eyes flickered like dying embers. Every instinct told Jake to flee, yet the dog remained firm, fighting against the tide of darkness that threatened to claim him. As they stood on the precipice of the unknown, shadows mingled with the edges of the light. Searing pain erupted in Jake's chest. It was a reminder of loss, of what he could lose in this screaming abyss. With each passing moment, the boy's figure grew more distorted, an echo of wickedness lost to time and vengeance. "Look at him!" the boy cackled, pointing a finger trembling with malice. "Your friend is nothing but a toy. The field hungers, and it will have its feast." A rising sense of dread swept through Jake as he felt the ground quake beneath him. He squeezed his eyes shut, clenching his fists until his nails bit into his palms. "Get away from us!" he yelled, trying to rally strength against the trembling fear that threatened to drown him. In response, Max began to growl, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to vibrate through the very ground. The darkness recoiled, but the boy's laughter twisted into a snarl, which rang out through the cornfield like a disease spreading through its rows. The laughter molded into cries, echoing screams of those trapped within. It was the sound of despair incarnate, swirling around Jake and Max, clawing at Jake's mind with relentless energy. He desperately sought to shield himself, the warmth of Max's fur a fleeting comfort from the growing chill. "Why fight it, Jake? You have the chance to save yourself." The boy's voice, now low and dripping with venom, seemed to wrap around Jake's consciousness like chains. "Give in. Embrace your end." Jake gasped, torn between the malevolence looming in front of him and the flicker of loyalty at his side. With shaking hands, Jake reached for the light, willing it to grow brighter. He pulled Max closer, wishing desperately to break this curse with the purity of their bond. What Jake didn't see was a shadow creeping ever closer behind. It stretched its long fingers toward Max, the darkness hungry for reclamation. Just as Jake began to feel a surge of warmth approaching, a harsh wind howled around them, snuffing out any lingering brightness. Jake's heart stopped, a belly-deep realization crashing upon him. If they failed now, he'd lose everything, and the darkness would swallow him whole. But then he saw it, a flicker of hope piercing through the storm. The light emanating from Max pulsed in waves, a heartbeat of warmth. "Together!" Jake shouted, and a surge of determination rushed through him. The darkness hesitated, curling back for that split second. But shadows were fickle, and revenge hard to deny. The ground beneath them split with a deafening crack, revealing the horrors of the void below. It beckoned, an insatiable maw gaping wide, the lost souls aspiring for new kin. Would Jake and Max join their ranks or emerge? Unscathed, the light flickered again, and as Jake fought against the pull of despair, a desperate decision loomed. The only question that echoed through the chaos was, what would happen when the light finally dimmed? Light waned and snapped in a chaotic dance around Jake and Max, shadows lunging like desperate animals. Jake felt a deep-seated panic hardening in his chest, each breath a struggle against the oppressive weight of despair. He couldn't lose Max, he wouldn't Max. He cried, as the shadows shifted, morphing and twisting. They thrashed like man-made monsters, terror incarnate. The darkness was alive, taunting him, ready to seize his resolve. Suddenly, the boy's laughter reeled them back into the chaos, sharp and slicing. "You want to save your pet? I'll let you. Just take one step closer to the edge." He gestured with exaggerated grace toward the void below, then erupted into cackling that echoed, an abysmal sound that danced through the still air. "Don't listen to him!" Jake shouted, summoning every ounce of strength to drown out the boy's voice. He shoved against the frantic turmoil of tension that gripped him, finding a flicker of courage amidst the uncertainty. "We can beat this," he declared, as love steadied his heart, a fierce bond of loyalty lighting the darkness within. Max's growl deepened, his sleek body taut with determination. The light radiating from him flickered like a heartbeat, a warm pulse that pushed back against the encroaching shadows, drawing energy from Jake's resolve. Together, they held firm, unyielding against the surging tide. With urgency, the boy's figure grew clearer, revealing eyes that glimmered with malevolence. Together? Such an amusing thought. He raised an arm, and vile whispers swept through the air, brushing against Jake's skin like icy fingers. "You won't succeed. The field welcomes you both in its endless hunger." A disparate surge of howling wind swirled around them, tossing the corn stalks violently, drowning them in a nightmare of sound. Jake clutched Max close, praying they could ride out the storm together, but the earth rumbled again, a threatening growl resonating beneath their feet. Jake's heart raced as the ground cracked wider, exposing the glistening blackness below. Dark tendrils lashed out, grasping at the boy's legs as if the earth itself craved their very essence. Then, everything shifted. The boy stood sturdy at the edge, laughing, mocking. "Embrace it. It's what you've always wanted." His grin widened, revealing teeth like jagged shards. He lunged forward with a fierce confidence that sent chills coiling down Jake's spine. "Max, hold on!" Jake yelled and thrust forward, the light wavering wildly, a paltry shield against the chaos. He could feel the dark tendrils seeking him, testing him, brushing against his skin with icy certainty. Behind him, Max stood resolute, panting heavily, a fortress against the encroaching fear. Then, a piercing scream ripped through the air, echoing from the depths. Purposeless cries filled Jake's mind, binding him to the torment around them. It was not just a sound, it was a memory, a warning pulling on his heart, a reminder of what lay in the pit of darkness. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted. Max leaped forward, electricity dancing from his body, melding with the light that surged from Jake's hands. The shadows recoiled, but the laughter intensified, wrapping like chains around Jake's mind. "Why fight it?" the boy hissed, his voice like silk twisted with poison. "You don't know what waits on the other side." Jake felt the terror swell within him, battling against the flicker of hope. "I won't let you take us." He spat, adrenaline surging through his veins. And in that moment of defiance, he found a thread of power pushing back against the boy's taunts. The ground shook violently, threatening to engulf them whole. Jake took a step forward, emboldened. But every instinct screamed against the pull of the abyss, the insatiable darkness longing to consume. As the dim light flickered once more, the crack beneath them widened. It promised secrets, horrors lurking just out of reach. What lies beneath? Jake wondered, his voice trembling. What lay waiting to drag them into eternal night? Would he have the courage to uncover it? They stood at the brink, heart racing, the ominous void stretching before them, whispering and beckoning, daring them to leap into the unknown. Jake felt the fierce tug of adrenaline as he stood at the edge, every heartbeat echoing in his ears, drowning out the sinister laughter that seeped into his bones. What lay below? Fury and tenderness mingled, a potent cocktail of fear and love for Max. He gripped the fraying rope of hope, determined to pull both himself and his loyal friend back from the brink. "Stay close!" Jake shouted, his voice cracking as he fought against the rising tide of shadows. He could see the dark boy standing defiantly, smugness painted across his face. The flickering light around Jake and Max flared brighter, threatening to burn through the darkness. But with every moment, the shadows pressed forward, clawing at their ankles. Such a noble pup. The boy cursed, pointedly looking at Max. But this is a game much bigger than you understand. Max's growl rumbled, deep and low. He lifted his hackles, the light emanating from him casting a protective glow that pushed back the curling tendrils for a fleeting moment. But the darkness was insatiable. It lunged, wrapping around Jake's legs, cold and clammy, trying to pull him into the pit's depths. "Max, back!" Jake shouted, shaking the dread that clung like dew on a chilly morning. He yanked his feet free, but the shadows shrieked in disapproval, a cacophony of anguished whispers clawing at his psyche. "Why not embrace it?" The boy's voice weaved in, sweet and sour like poison. "Think of the freedom. No pain, no fear. Just surrender." The laughter coiled through the air, worming its way into Jake's mind, twisting reality into a slimy nightmare, but Jake dug deeper, pulling on the last shreds of courage. "We can't let him win. We have to fight." Suddenly, the ground trembled with renewed anger. Dark shapes writhed in the void, darting like fish in murky water. Flames erupted in the churning darkness, illuminating dark faces twisted in agony, figures from a long-forgotten regret. Faces he recognized. Friends, lost to time. Jake's breath hitched as memories flooded forward, each a specter from his past brought forward to taunt. "Run away. Run far from this cursed place," they screamed, their mouths opening in silent agony. Instinct kicked in, he wouldn't abandon Max. "We won T." Jake yelled back, gripping onto the flickering light as though it could wash all fear away, but the shadows pushed closer. They gnawed relentlessly, sapping strength from his very soul. A cold sweat dripped down his back as panic tightened its grip. He could hear the boy laughing more wildly now. "Did you really think hope could win against the darkness?" With burning resolve, Jake clutched the frayed thread of light tightly. "We won T, give in." He shot back. The shadows recoiled briefly, startled by the conviction in his voice. Then, a soft whimper. Jake's heart dropped. The shadows had wrapped around the dog's paws, yanking him back. "Max!" he screamed, reaching for his friend desperately. A pulse of energy surged between them, a lifeline, a bond unbreakable. At that moment, something cracked in the air, a visceral sound that sent his heart racing. A sudden, blinding flash exploded from where they stood, illuminating the cornfield like daybreak. For an instant, everything froze, the harsh laughter, the reach of the shadows, even the ground's tremors. Then the darkness roared back. The ephemeral light twisted, arcing in a burst of energy that sent shockwaves through the shadows, but it was gone as quickly as it came, leaving only the boy's scream, a sound of rage and realization. "The field won T, claim you yet." The moment passed and Jake found himself staring at a new shape materializing within the shadows. A large, hulking figure with sorrowful eyes and a furrowed brow emerged, moving with agonizing slowness. Jake's pulse quickened. What was it? Friend or foe? The ground whispered, serpentine tendrils inching closer. Who are you?" Jake stammered, eyes wide, the new shadow looming over him. It could mean salvation or doom, but he had to choose before it was too late. As the figure stepped closer, he could sense confusion mixed with an all-consuming dread. What had he stumbled into? What more lurked within the darkness, waiting for them? And then the laughter started again, echoing from the void, promising that this nightmare was far from over. The hulking figure moved toward Jake, its outline shifting like smoke. With every step, the air grew thicker, saturated with desperation and regret. The eyes, glimmering pools of sorrow, locked onto Jake, searching, pleading, maybe even hoping. The shadows still writhed around them, but this new presence seemed to steal their strength. "Help," it breathed, barely more than a whisper, yet the words sliced through the suffocating darkness. Was this creature really asking for assistance, or was it baiting him into a trap? Jake's heart thundered, torn between instinct and the urge to flee. "Max!" Jake panted, urging his friend forward. He needed the dog's loyalty, the one thing that had proven unwavering in this chaos. The shadows hissed louder at their feet, trying to siphon away Jake's courage, amplifying every doubt in his mind. "Help me before it's too late," the figure rasped again, its voice cracking under the weight of its own sorrow. "You don't understand the game, stop talking in riddles," Jake shouted, frustration bubbling to the surface. He couldn't afford to lose control now. The darkness was relentless, and with every moment wasted, it twisted around Max tighter. A chill gripped him as he realized the fleeting light around them had begun to dim. The boy's laughter echoed again, mocking and cruel. "You think you can save him? You share a bond, but he's just another pawn in this game." "Shut up!" Jake roared, fury igniting within him. There was always enough power in friendship to fight against the void, he believed that fiercely. "Get away from us!" But the boy's words slithered deeper. The corners of his lips curled into something serpentine. "Their pasts haunt them, boy. Just like you. We all have shadows to confront." And suddenly, vision spiraled before Jake's eyes. Moments from his life flickered like a silent film: his parents' disappointment, the day he lost his brother, regrets he had buried deep. Churning emotions threatened to swallow him whole. Each memory pushed down the embers of hope, reminding him of everything he had lost. "No! I won't give in!" he screamed, grabbing hold of Max's collar. He could feel the fire within him rise again, ignited by the bond they shared. "We're stronger together." The figure recoiled, eyes widening as the shadows trembled at Jake's declaration. "You've got to break the cycle. You're not just here to play." It erupted into a horrific cacophony of distorted cries, as if the very essence of the darkness grew upon hearing those words. In that instant, Jake felt a surge of clarity. "I am not afraid anymore," he shouted. He turned to the figure, who shifted in the growing tumult, becoming more defined, more solid. "Show me what to do." The hulking figure hesitated, and for a fleeting moment, Jake saw a flicker of understanding in its mournful eyes. But then came another throaty laughter, sharper and more powerful, echoing through the cornfield. The shadows curved and bulged, a living mass that threatened to become all-consuming. "Do you think I'll let you escape so easily?" The boy sneered, his face twisting grotesquely in the dim light. "This is just the first chapter. You are in my domain now." Max lunged, snapping at the dark tendrils gripping his paws, but Jake was paralyzed. The struggle of shadows erupted around them, feverishly pulling and clenching, an abyss of screams rising in a crescendo, dragging him toward despair. "Jake!" the figure yelled, its voice cutting through the chaos. "The only way out is through. Find your truth." As the shadows encroached and the ground shook beneath them, Jake's mind raced. What truth? What was he meant to face? He glanced at Max, the unwavering loyalty of his companion grounding him even as despair threatened to drown them. In the heart of the chaos, a spark ignited within him. The darkness might whisper sweet temptations, but he knew what he had to do. Unyielding hope surged through him, elevating him above the cacophony. He wasn't just Jake anymore, he was the boy who refused to back down. He would fight until his last breath, then, just as he steeled himself to attack, a deep rumble echoed through the ground. The terrifying shadows parted for a brief moment, revealing a path that led deeper into the heart of the darkness. "There!" Jake shouted, determination filling his voice. "Let us go." But as they took a step forward, a frigid wind swept through, and a dreadful whisper clawed at Jake's mind. "You're walking straight into the jaws of the unknown." What lay ahead? Darkness coiled like a serpent, waiting to strike. Jake and Max took a breath, steeling themselves for the choices they had yet to face. Was this the beginning of a true confrontation, or would they become trapped within the shadows forever? Jake felt the raw intensity of fear mixing with determination in a potent brew within him as he stood at the eye of the storm, the very heart of the darkness. The shadows surged around him, hungry and insatiable, while the boy's laughter twirled ominously through the air like a deadly dance. "This is where the game truly begins," the boy taunted, his smile twisted and haunting. But Jake wasn't in the mood to play anymore. Gritting his teeth, he recalled all the moments that had led him here, the joy of chasing Max in the sun, the warmth of home, the laughter of friends. Each memory solidified his resolve. He refused to become another victim of the Cornfield Whisperer. "Max, we can do this. We have each other," Jake shouted, clenching his fist around a new sense of fight. He could feel the bond between them stretching, shaking off the violent grip of despair. As if in response, Max's growl grew deeper, a fierce protective energy that ignited a fire inside Jake's heart. Once more, he stepped toward the darkness. "Show me your truth," he roared, pushing through the tendrils of shadow that reached for him like lies trying to bind him. He could sense the boy's confusion, the fissures of power wavering as he confronted the enigma lurking in the depths. Suddenly, the hulking figure stepped forward, its eyes steady and strong. "Believe in your bond. Love is the light that can pierce even the blackest night." Jake could almost see the light pulsing around him, a beacon shimmering in stark contrast to the darkness that ached to consume them. He could feel the energy shifting, the shadows recoiling as the fabric of reality began to unravel around them. "Jake, behind you." The figure's voice trembled with urgency. Jake turned just in time to see the boy lunging at him, teeth bared, a primal scream escaping him. "No one leaves the field." Time slowed as the boy careened forward, eyes wild with desperation. Panic flashed in Jake's mind, a surge of instinct fired through him. He grabbed Max's collar, holding tight, and together, powered by their bond, they pushed toward the pulsing light. Together, they yelled, harmonizing in a sense of rhythm, channeling everything they had left into one final burst of strength. The light flared, and with it, an explosion of sound erupted as shadows screamed in fury, twisting and writhing, collapsing in on themselves. But Jake didn't stop. He ran faster, adrenaline surging through his veins as the crack of breaking waves echoed around them, reverberating through the very fabric of the field. The boy slipped to the ground, his laughter turning into howls of rage. "You can't escape. The field will always belong to me." But the shadows, once fierce, sagged, crumbling like stale bread. They couldn't stand against the unwavering light fueled by Jake's desperation and love for his friend. "Unhand him," Jake bellowed, pointing the fading beam of his flashlight toward the boy, illuminating his face twisted in terror. In those harrowing moments, time itself melted as the connections of Jake's memories intertwined with his present actions, forging new realities in the electric haze. His resolve shattered the illusory chains that bound the souls, loosening their grip on both him and Max, and then, with one final leap, they crossed the threshold, the edge of the cornfield, spilling out into the familiar woods, a sanctuary that welcomed them back. Panting, breathless, they stumbled onto firm ground. The light softened, quieting almost to a whisper, yet the darkness pulsed behind them, a warning sigh echoing around. Jake felt a swell of triumph in his chest, relief flooding over him like a wave. They had fought their way through the nightmare. But he knew the battle wasn't over completely. "We're not done yet. We'll return for those who can't escape," he vowed, looking over at Max, his loyal companion. Max wagged his tail weakly, his eyes sparkling with life, as if to say, "We'll look after them together." And as they walked away from the ominous field, the whispers began to fade, mingling with the songs of the trees, wrapping them in comfort. "We'll tell everyone," Jake said softly. "About the Cornfield Whisperer and the truth behind the lost souls. They deserve to know." Every step away felt lighter, the grip of fear loosening with each echoing heartbeat. And though the shadows lingered at the edges of his mind, Jake knew he had carved a new path, one filled with resilience, love, and the courage to shine even in the darkest of times. Nothing could take that from him now. "Let us go home," he whispered, hope blazing anew within him. So, dear friends, as we wrap up this chilling tale, don't forget to stand firm against your own shadows. If you love this story, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't miss our next thrilling adventure. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the dark tales coming. I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this dramatic conclusion. What do you think awaits Jake and Max on their next journey? And please, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. There are more secrets to unravel, and you don't want to be left in the dark.